That was Defense Department Press Secretary John Kirby giving a briefing at the Pentagon on troops being deployed to Afghanistan to assist in pulling civilians out of the embassy there in Kabul. Kirby says that troop movements are happening right at this moment and that 3 battalions are on their way to Kabul. Some troops are already there on the ground, and the bulk of them will be in place by the end of the weekend. Now, this all comes after the Taliban seized the country's second-largest city of Kandahar overnight. Militants have taken control of 15 provincial capitals in just the past week, and they're closing in on the country's capital of Kabul. Kirby expressed also some concern over the speed of the Taliban advance, saying that it was a factor in why these troops are being deployed. I want to listen to that moment.
We are certainly concerned by the speed with which the Taliban has been moving. As we've said from the very beginning, that this is and it still is, a moment for Afghan national security and defense forces as well as their political leadership. No outcome has to be inevitable here. I'm not going to speculate about surprise. We're obviously watching this just like you're watching this and seeing it happen in real time, and it's deeply concerning. It's, in fact, the deteriorating conditions are a big factor in why the president has approved this mission to help support the reduction of personnel there in Kabul. So, I mean, we're adjusting as best we can given those conditions. And again, this is a moment for the Afghans to unite, the leadership and in the military. No outcome has to be inevitable here.
Let's go to senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez for more on that. Louis, I know you were just in that briefing. You heard Kirby there expressing confidence, it sounds like, in the Afghan army. He said this is a moment for the Afghans to unite, the leadership and in the military. He said twice, just in that quote alone, no outcome has to be inevitable. And he also outright kept saying that they have an advantage right now. They have an advantage right now. Give us a reality check here. What do you think about that advantage, given the advance we've seen from the Taliban in just the past few days?
No, you're right, Diane. That is exactly the same messaging that we have heard from Kirby, from Jen Psaki at the White House, from Ned Price at the State Department. Very consistent messaging from the Biden administration that the ball is in the Afghan military's court, in the Afghan government's court. They're talking about leadership, that they need to step up. They've got the advantages. They need to use them. Well, we know that they have very elite special operations forces, which they were sending to some of these hotspots in southern Afghanistan and western Afghanistan last week. They were holding the Taliban at bay for a time. And then we started seeing the movements up in the north, where those provincial capitals started being taken by the Taliban. And then just 2 days ago, we saw all of the pressure in the south collapsing in on those elite troops, and they are no longer there. The Taliban is now in charge of Kandahar. They're in charge of Lashkar-Gah. They're in charge of Herat. That's where all those forces were sent. So they did step up by sending troops there. But what we're seeing now is that momentum is definitely inside in favor of the Taliban, as you're seeing on this map right now. Those are 15 provincial capitals, not just in one region of Afghanistan, but throughout the entire country. And that shows the level of sophistication right now of this Taliban offensive. You heard Kirby in that quote right now talk about how they've been concerned about the speed of this. The reporter's question was, were you surprised? Instead, he wouldn't use that. He used more the term concerned, because he said, obviously, this was a main reason why we went in with these, or going in with these additional troops to help get people out of the embassy and to get these special immigrant visa holders, tens of thousands of them, the interpreters who help the U.S. military and their families. So we're seeing the same language. It's unclear if those capabilities that he listed are going to be able to help the Afghan government maintain itself should the Taliban strike Kabul. And we heard him say right now that it appears that they are trying to isolate Kabul right now.
And Louis, he actually went so far as to list some of the reasons why they should be able to, saying that the Afghan army has the advantage of U.S. resources as well as 20 years of U.S. training. So why are we seeing the Taliban advance so quickly? Why can't they hold them at bay? Is the U.S. just severely underestimating the Taliban right now?
I think that's a question that many people are asking. Why, after all this investment, after the billions of dollars that were spent on training the Afghan military, on resourcing them with the high-tech equipment that you mentioned, why is this happening, particularly in these areas? And I think one of the factors goes back to what we've heard from Kirby himself and others, spokespeople at the White House and at the State Department. It's about leadership, but they also talk about the word will. Is there the will to fight among these forces who are working for the Afghan government, the Afghan military, but whose allegiances may be tribal, or who may decide that, hey, this is not worth fighting for after all? These are questions that everybody's asking. They're legitimate questions, and I think they're questions that are being asked here at the Pentagon itself. I've been talking to officials all day, and the word is not concern, but frustration that this is actually occurring, because now you are seeing that the military, U.S. military, has to step up again to ensure the security of American civilians, American diplomats, and these Afghan interpreters and their families.
And we also heard Kirby admit that the Taliban is trying to isolate Kabul right now. How significant is that?
That's very significant, Diane, because we've seen the momentum shift from the south to the north in Afghanistan all the way to the west. We've seen some of these provinces that are close by to Kabul. That's one of them was taken, Ghazni. That is a key center just 80 miles down the road. We're hearing that forces are moving down there, down that road. So what does that mean? That means typically you would think that military forces, after such a sweep, would try to consolidate their forces so that they could move on an all-out advance onto Kabul later on. Maybe that's not what the Taliban wants to do. Maybe they want to build on this momentum and streak down towards Kabul, regardless of how many forces they get there. These are things that the U.S. military is observing and trying to figure out exactly what's going on. But most significantly, it's the Afghan government that needs to know this, because they are the ones who are going to be providing and ensuring the defense of Kabul if it looks like the Taliban heads there.
And Louis, what can you tell us about the Afghans who are trying to get out of the country through this special visa program? How many of them will be able to get out, and what happens to them if they do?
We're talking thousands. We are talking about a maximum maybe of 20,000 individuals who worked as interpreters for the U.S. government, for the U.S. military over the last 20 years, and their families. It was a complicated visa process that's been sped up by congressional legislation, been sped up by the efforts here at the Pentagon and the State Department to try to facilitate their exit. The numbers, I mean, I've seen estimates as high as 50,000, maybe 70,000. That is a large number of people that you're trying to get out in a short period of time. It's unclear exactly how long this mission is going to last. You heard Kirby say at one point the military drawdown mission ends as scheduled on August 31st, but that doesn't mean that this other mission will end on that same date. So maybe there's more time, but I think a lot really depends on the security situation in Kabul. You may have heard me ask that question if there's a secondary effect here about having these troops there, because by having that American troop presence in Kabul, maybe that deflects the Taliban away from wanting to strike. But again, you heard Kirby did not want to answer that. He didn't frame it that way. He said, no, the troops are there essentially to provide the security for these Americans, the diplomats, and the interpreters as they leave. And another question, Diane, where do these interpreters go? Because we know that the State Department has been trying to negotiate deals with neighboring countries, with other countries, to see if they can take them, and we have not yet heard deals announced yet. What we have seen is about 1,000 who have arrived here at Fort Lee in Virginia, and maybe this is where they'll end up. But for now, it would be much easier to keep them in the region to maintain that flow. He did say at one point, we're talking about a capacity that we'll be able to fly out thousands of individuals a day, though it may not get to that point. But the capability, the airlift, be it military, be it commercial aircraft, will be available in coming days.
All right, senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez. Always great to talk to you, Louis. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.